Radiation therapy has saved countless lives, but it rarely leaves without a trace. For many cancer survivors, the battle doesn't end when the last beam of ionizing energy fades. Months or even years later, they're left with fatigue, fibrosis, cardiovascular complications, immune dysfunction, or cognitive decline, depending on which tissues took the hit. While we've known that radiation inflicts damage at the DNA level, only more recently has another culprit stepped into the spotlight: radiation-induced senescent cells and their long-term, tissue-altering consequences. Ionizing radiation is a blunt force weapon. It works by damaging DNA, which pushes cells to either die, mutate, or, quite commonly, enter a state of senescence. These post-radiation senescent cells are like exhausted guards, alive, but unable to divide or function normally, and far from silent. They often secrete pro-inflammatory and matrix-degrading molecules collectively known as the SASP, senescence-associated secretory phenotype, which can create a toxic microenvironment. Left unchecked, this cellular fallout can lead to chronic inflammation, impaired tissue repair, and the gradual erosion of organ function in cancer survivors. But not all radiation-induced senescent cells are equally harmful, and that opens a vital therapeutic window. Just as fibroblasts, endothelial cells, and epithelial cells each respond differently to radiation depending on their tissue and environment, their senescent fates also diverge. Some enter a temporary senescence-like state that resolves with proper immune clearance. Others become long-term SASP superproducers, subtly sabotaging local tissue for years. The key to protecting survivors lies in learning how to distinguish the harmful subtypes from the harmless or helpful ones, and then designing interventions accordingly. This is where a new wave of post-radiation research is headed. Not just understanding that senescence occurs after radiation, but mapping exactly which senescent populations persist, what they're secreting, and how they affect their neighbors. In the lungs, for example, radiation can drive senescence in alveolar epithelial cells and fibroblasts, leading to pulmonary fibrosis. In the brain, irradiated glial cells may become inflammatory, disrupting synaptic function and contributing to cognitive decline. In the heart, vascular endothelial senescence accelerates atherosclerosis. The common thread is that radiation doesn't just kill, it leaves behind a dysfunctional cast of zombie-like cells that actively remodel the tissue for the worse. To intervene effectively, we need a two-pronged strategy: clear the harmful senescent cells and protect the tissue's structural and regenerative integrity. Several tools are being explored for this. One is the development of senolytic therapies, drugs that selectively kill senescent cells. Early candidates like dasatinib, quercetin, and navitoclax have shown promise in animal models, including those exposed to radiation. When administered after radiation, these drugs can reduce fibrosis, improve organ function, and lower systemic inflammation. But they're not perfect. Some senolytics have off-target effects or toxicity, and they don't always distinguish between good and bad senescent cells. The field is now evolving towards subtype-specific senolytics that target cells based on unique markers, like P16-INK4A, BCLXL dependency, or metabolic profile, allowing us to eliminate only the most damaging cells. Another strategy is xenomorphics, compounds that don't kill senescent cells, but instead suppress their SASP. These drugs, including rapamycin, metformin, and JK inhibitors, can reduce inflammation and fibrosis without disrupting tissue architecture. This might be especially useful in tissues where senescent cells contribute to wound healing or barrier maintenance, like the skin, gut, or vasculature. Meanwhile, immune-based approaches are gaining traction. Normally, the immune system clears senescent cells, but radiation can impair this clearance, either by damaging immune cells or altering their signaling. By rejuvenating immune surveillance, perhaps through checkpoint inhibitors, cytokine therapies, or even vaccines directed against senescent cell antigens, we might restore the body's natural senescence cleanup crew. This could allow for selective, physiological removal of senescent cells after radiation, avoiding broad pharmacologic damage. All of this is increasingly guided by machine learning and spatial profiling tools, which can map senescent cell populations across irradiated tissues, revealing who's secreting what and where. AI-powered image analysis can now spot senescent morphologies in biopsies or even circulating cells, providing a personalized snapshot of a survivor's senescence burden. In the future, A cancer survivor might undergo a post-treatment scan not just for tumor recurrence, but to evaluate their senescent load and receive targeted therapy accordingly. Ultimately, this field is driven by a simple goal: to ensure that beating cancer doesn't come with a delayed cellular cost. Radiation will likely remain a pillar of oncology for decades to come, but its aftermath doesn't have to be a life sentence of tissue degradation. If we can understand how radiation-induced senescence plays out across different organs and intervene with precision, clearing what's harmful, preserving what's useful, we may finally turn survivorship into a true return to health, not just remission. Because survival is no longer the finish line. It's the beginning of a second cellular act, and we finally have the tools to shape it wisely.